Welcome everyone. It's Let's Talk About It with LunaRoo. I'm Luna.
I'm Rue.
Today's topic is Ted Bundy. We're going to talk about himself, the crimes he committed, the impact it had on society, and basically how it reconstructed social norms, because a whole lot of social norms had to change.
For sure. And feminism.
Right. The timing on the whole thing was just,
Yeah, it was right in the middle of everything.
yeah, a whole lot of, like,
Upheaval.
yeah, a lot of different types of civil rights movements going on, and then on top of it all,
Just people dying.
okay, so I will read this brief little biography on him from the crime museum that is located in Washington D.C. They made a nice little, not too long, but goes over the important information, give us a little give anybody like refresher on certain details, so it makes it a little easier to follow along in our discussion today. Let's see. Ted Bundy was born November 24th, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. He grew up to be a charming, articulate, and intelligent young man. However, by the time he was a teenager living in Washington, Bundy already exhibited signs of the sadistic serial killer he would become. Uh, In interviews, he recalled being antisocial and wandering the streets looking for discarded pornography or open windows through which he would spy on unsuspecting women. He also had an extensive juvenile record for theft that was dismissed when he turned 18, so basically expunged. By 1972, he had graduated college and showed great promise in a career in law or politics. That career would be cut short, though, when he discovered his true passion of viciously
What's
assaulting.
breaking the law?
What?
Breaking the law.
Right. Instead of enforcing it, breaking it. Uh,
Sorry to interrupt.
no worries. Um, viciously assaulting his earliest confirmed victim in 1974. Let's see. He tended to prey on young and attractive college women, first near his home in Washington, then to Utah, Colorado, and finally in Florida. Bundy would prey on these women with a ruse, the most common one being the arm in a sling or his leg in a fake cast, walking on crutches. There's also instances of him impersonating police officers, um, all to gain either the victim's sympathy or trust before attacking them. Uh, After hitting his victims, he would immobilize them with handcuffs, um, and then proceed to do and then he would typically rape and then kill them. Uh, as body counts rose and witnesses' descriptions spread, several people contacted authorities to report Bundy as a potentially matching suspect. However, police consistently ruled him out based on his seemingly upstanding character and clean-cut appearance. He was able to avoid detection even longer by learning how to leave virtually no evidence that could be traced by the still rudimentary forensics techniques of the 1970s. Bundy was finally arrested for the first time August 16th, 1975, in Utah after fleeing from a patrol car. A search of the vehicle yielded masks, handcuffs, ropes, and other nefarious items, but nothing definitively linking him to the crimes. He was released but remained under constant surveillance until he was arrested again for the kidnapping and assault of one of his victims several months later. Bundy escaped custody a year later after being transferred from Utah to Colorado for another trial, but was recaptured within a week. He then managed to escape a second time on December 30th, 1977, at which point he was able to reach Florida and resume his killing spree. He raped or murdered at least 6 more victims, 5 of them Florida State University students, before he was apprehended again for a traffic violation on February 15th, 1978. He was finally sentenced to death and died in an electric chair on January 24th, 1989. At the time of his execution, Bundy had confessed to 30 murders, though the actual number of his victims will forever remain unknown.
For sure. He was a crazy bastard, huh?
And of those 30 confirmed, only 20 have been identified.
Recovered. Oh, identified. Okay.
Because it's confirmed, because he said, he had committed those 30, but they weren't able, 10 of them, they were not able to identify who they were.
Okay. And it's interesting that they weren't able to identify them, because normally serial killers do go after, like, people living high risk lifestyles, but he went after college students who, had families who really cared about them, noticed right away when they went missing. So it's interesting that I didn't know that he had some unidentified victims, actually.
Well, it didn't help because it was the 1970s and 80s, and he left them in the woods, meaning when animals got to him, there's really not a whole lot left for the cops to work with to identify who they are. Because there were, in the case of the 2 girls that were taken on the same day from Lake Sammamish, when they were found, they were able to find their jawbones.
Yes, for the dental records.
Exactly, but even though they found other bodies, they weren't, they were bones that weren't able to really be identified, because you can't really use femurs or stuff like that, especially during that time.
Yeah, they found like 2 femurs, right?
Yeah, they found 4 femurs, I think 2 of which they just were like, whose are these? And because they're not bones you can just be like, oh, this was obviously, like, nowadays it's easier. There are more bones now. If you get to them soon enough, you can tell whose is whose, but we are, of course, talking about the 70s, where they were still using bite mark evidence, which has since been disproven, but...
Yes, it has. And wasn't that actually one of the things that really got him convicted?
Yep.
Yep. I mean, obviously he did it.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. Other evidence, but that was like one of their big. We have a bite mark, and look, his teeth, and did the bite mark. It's obviously the same guy. It's like, we have all this other evidence that's much more, I don't know, solid.
Concrete.
We should probably lean on that instead.
Definitely. So Luna has a family connection story that I have been dying to hear. So I would love it.
Mentioning to, like, this whole week leading up to this, I keep, like, when people are like, "Oh, what are you talking about this week?" I'm like, "We're talking about Ted Bundy," and I, in fact, actually have a story in connection to that. And they're like, "What?"
I've just been like, I'd love to hear it.
Let's see. Where to start? Okay, it actually took place July 14th, 1974, the day the 2 women were taken from Lake Sammamish.
Oh.
Apparently, my grandmother was there, and she was there with either one or both of her kids, so I don't know if it was, like, just my mom or just my aunt or both of them. They're close to the same age, so I wouldn't be surprised if they were both there. But because they were there with her is why she was okay that day. And so the story goes, she was there and hanging out. She was a young mother, so she was within the age range that Bundy was after. And this was also during a time where, that hairstyle he liked was very popular. And even though my grandmother has hair like me, crazy curly hair, she was, it was around that time that she actually had been straightening it so it looked more like what was popular at the time. And it was brown, and it was, so basically she fit all the criteria of what he was after. And he talked to a lot of people that day trying to use his ruse.
Because wasn't there like 40,000 something people who came out that day?
Yeah, lots of...
To that area?
Roughly. And a lot of them saw, this guy going around talking to multiple women saying, "Hey, can you help me?" and blah, blah, blah. So my grandmother had gone to, I think, the car or something, pointed, she was grabbing something for her kids, my mom and aunt, and was like rushing back to get to them because she was either there with a friend or maybe even my papa. Point is, she was like, okay, I'm gotta get back to my kids, get this, I don't know, maybe diaper or something to back there and take care of my kid. And when she was trying to get back to her kids, she was approached by a man in a cast sling who was asking help to get something kind of big. It was like some kind of like water, like flotation type, one of the many different types of flotation devices you use when you're swimming or whatever. I don't remember what it was. It was like a small boat or a kayak or whatever it was. And he was like, hey, can you help me get this into my car? I really need help, and blah, blah, blah. And my grandmother is typically the kind of person who will not hesitate to help people. And so if she wasn't rushing to get back to her kids with whatever it was she had gotten for them, if she wasn't in such a rush, she would have helped him.
Oh, God.
But just because she was in a rush, she was like, I am so sorry. I totally would, but I am in such a rush. I need to get back to blah, 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 blah. I need to hurry. I'm in a rush. I'm so sorry. And,
That's
walked
so
away.
crazy.
And then it wasn't until a little while later when his other victims were describing his ruse and whatnot. And she was like, oh my God, there was a guy doing that. Like, I ran into a guy, saying that, and then when she saw him on the television, she was like, "Oh my God, that guy tried to get me."
That is so insane. That's so crazy. Was she ever interviewed by like the police or anything?
I think she said she was interviewed like the day of when the girls went missing because she was there and she was one of the witnesses. Yeah. And she was one of the many witnesses that like saw this guy, but for some reason never saw the women actually be taken.
Right. That's so insane. And that's what gets me. Like, there were so many people there that day, and he got 2 girls.
Well,
like, how
either being in the middle of nowhere and everything empty doesn't help because nobody can see what's going on, but then having a whole bunch of people where there's too many people blocking your view, too many voices happening at once for you to really like distinguish anything, especially when at a lake where people are playing, there's going to be a whole lot of shouting and everything anywho. So if somebody else is like screaming, some people will, if they got the chance to even, some people might brush it off as kids playing or college kids messing with each other while they're playing volleyball or whatever. Because there's a lot of games going on too.
Yeah, and one of the things that I thought was strange, I was watching that Prime documentary thing, and they had interviewed a man who said he had seen that going on. He had seen him just keep getting rejected by women, like asking them for help.
Yeah.
And then he went up to, I think it was the second girl who was abducted, and she was like, okay, like whatever. But this guy like watched the whole thing, like, and it was the 70s. I would think that he would be like, why are you asking women to help you? Like, why, like, I'll help you or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just thought that was suspicious. That guy just like watched that happening like several different times and didn't say anything or try to interfere. But whatever.
I mean, it could have also been interpreted as, this guy's weird. Because, sometimes when you're in like, or at least I know from growing up in Seattle, people acting weird, you typically just go, that guy's weird.
Oh, he's
what the
weird.
heck is his problem? But then you get on with your day. You like don't really think anything of it.
True. That is very true.
Oh, that guy's really weird. I wonder what his problem is, and then you keep going.
That's true. And yeah, like you said, Seattle. Washington. I love that place.
Dang Washington. Not sure why we have such a high concentration of most of the notorious serial killers coming from here.
I know.
What's
It's
Washington
insane.
known for? Let's see. The
Serial
market where they
killers
throw the fish, coffee, and serial killers. Oh yeah, and a couple mountains too. But
and craft beer, artisan beer.
yes, that too. And don't forget the Space Needle.
True. I always forget about that.
Hi
What
Terry.
was I gonna say?
This is
Oh,
fine,
hi.
right, Terry? It's totally fine.
um, so there's the Green River Killer, Bundy, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Israel Keys, Keith Keith Jesperson, and I'm sure there are plenty more, but those are like the four like serial killers I think of when I think of Washington
Oh
State.
yeah, because they're the ones who had the biggest impact, and like their
Yeah.
actions changed the way people just changed live their everyday lives. Because if
Yes.
you look at
And
interviews with
insane.
people who knew the victims or like were just living through this, when they realized that all these disappearances and murders were connected, they're just like they'd never. This kind of thing wasn't common. It wasn't like today where serial killer was like a common term everyone knew.
Yeah, back then that wasn't something that,
And
you know,
they were just like, what the heck is this? Why across multiple states are these crimes that are all very eerily familiar happening? What is going on? And people who used to feel safe going to certain places on their own and whatnot suddenly didn't, and all of a sudden you had to just be just extremely more careful.
so much more careful. And I remember like reading something about because he loved the, young co-ed aged women with the brown hair parted down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading like a bunch of women were going out and they were buying blonde hair dye because they
Yeah.
were so afraid because they fit the stereotype.
Yeah,
But
that's actually one of the effects it had on my grandmother's was she straightened her hair less often, so she didn't.
oh yeah.
So she ended. That was roughly the time when she started embracing just having a mess of like ringlet curls on her head.
Isn't that just so crazy that your grandmother spoke to Ted Bundy?
Right? It's a
I
very
think
weird thought.
not only did she speak to him, he like was trying to murder her.
She still helps random people to this day.
Oh God,
And
I would be
sometimes I'll
so
be
freaked out
like,
by
"Did
that.
you learn nothing? Stop!"
Right? If some guy asked me to lift something, I would like actually laugh in their face though. I'd be like, "Why are you asking me?"
Oh, Terry, were you not here when I told the story? I'm gonna need to rewatch this. Right? But
So interesting.
short version of the story I told earlier for anybody who's just now joining us. Yeah, my grandmother was there July 14th, 1974, Lake Sammamish, the day two girls were abducted mere hours apart, and my grandmother was one of the people Ted Bundy approached. But because
Insane.
she had a couple kids with her and she was in a rush to get back, she was like, "I'm very sorry. I otherwise would totally help you, but I am in such a rush right now. I really need to get back," and blah, 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 blah. And ended up not helping. Because honestly, if she was not in a rush to get back to her two kids, she totally would have helped. And my family's lives would have been so different.
Very different. So insane.
Terry, that's going to be a big no from me, dog. Right, Terry? Just very
For real
just
though.
big nope. Just nah. But
I always wonder like if I've ever met a serial killer that hasn't been like discovered yet.
right?
I know that Israel Keys has been to Rhode Island. He's been to almost every single state in America. I think the only one he hasn't like killed in was like, I don't know. I mean, he didn't kill people in every state he went to.
Right.
Well, I mean, you never know. He actually might have, because we'll never know the real number of victims from him. And I think only two of his.
That's the thing. Most of the serial killers, you never know what the actual number is.
It's just that Israel Keys was so good at hiding bodies
Mm-hmm.
and also making the bodies that were discovered look like an accident. So like he will really never ever know. Like there's and he didn't have a type either. He just
Mm-hmm.
killed whoever he could get his hands on. Whereas with Ted Bundy, kind of easy to, look around at the missing persons things and be like, oh, well, that he has this girl's missing. She fits the type she possibly could be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but even
But
then, you don't know for sure because it could be a
oh, yeah,
coincidence as well.
for
Because that's
sure.
what they thought for the longest time is it was a coincidence that it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, something's happening, I guess, but it could be just a coincidence too. It just so happens to be that these first six girls just happen to look very similar and happen to disappear in a very similar fashion and
And like
happen to
right
be
around the
only
same
like a month
area.
apart from each other.
So crazy.
But again, you
But
have to understand, like, Ted Bundy was one of the first actual, like, notorious, actually
yeah.
gained some sort of infamy to the point where people actually know of him to this day. And
Yeah.
so,
I
no,
mean,
they weren't going to, they would have assumed it was just a coincidence because no one
oh,
had
for
ever
sure they
heard of
would.
somebody just, I don't know, that's just their thing and they keep doing it and they can't help it. And,
Like, I think it wasn't until the late 70s where where the FBI even started, you know, like these psychological profiles
mm,
for killers. Nobody had really thought of like serial repeat offenders and like MOs and types and stuff. So it wasn't until after Ted Bundy that they were like, oh my God, like this is like a thing and there's probably more people like him out there.
well, during
And
Ted
that's when they
Bundy,
started,
because there was somebody on the police
yes,
force who came up with,
that woman,
yeah,
yeah, the woman was the, it's always the woman.
it is right,
She was the one who came up with the profile. But I mean, like,
and it was mostly
that
spot
was,
on. There was like a couple things that were just a little off, but for the most part, it was spot
yeah,
on.
for sure. But like before that, profiling wasn't as big as it was, and it
Mm-hmm.
was certainly wasn't used in multiple states
Mm-hmm.
or like taught to, police departments. They were really lucky that they had her because
Yeah,
it was such a like a bunch of people were going missing. So, it wasn't until her and like
and it wasn't until his case was
Ted
finished that
Bundy.
they're like, oh, hey, this helped. Let's do this more
Yeah,
often to find people's.
for sure. It's so crazy to think about how like far we've come with crime. Like I'm still dying. Like I mean, the Golden State Killer, like the original Night Stalker.
Mm-hmm.
He was just arrested. What was it, 3 years ago,
Something like
because of
yeah.
the family DNA
Mm-hmm.
on like Ancestry.com. I like am so excited that we're finding all these like notorious. I don't know if we'll ever find the Zodiac though.
No. Oh
No,
yeah,
I
Terry
think I've
did
mentioned
work.
that before.
They must have fixed
Oh
that.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't know. We'll know all the because there are some out there who just not only never got caught, but like their cases were probably never even realized. Nobody realized that
oh
they
yeah,
were connected because the less they have, in common, the less they have common with each and every crime they commit. If there's too many
yeah.
variations, like they don't have a specific type, they don't have a specific style, they don't have like a certain like way or
That's
time
like
of doing things or anything like that. If there's huge variables, there's no way to connect the crimes and know that it was all one person. So there's probably
exactly.
a lot of
That's
serial
like why
killers.
Israel Keys took so long for them to even like they had no idea. Like the only reason they even found out that he had other victims was because he like basically told them.
Mm-hmm.
But like he killed like this older couple in Vermont. He would go to all these states and go to the woods and he would bury these kill kits and then years later come back, redig up the kill kit and then go kill somebody. And it didn't matter like if it wasn't for him like telling them like oh yeah, like I have more victims, they never would have known because there was nothing in common about any of his killings really.
That was the thing. That was
But
the thing with Ted Bundy too, and the Green River Killer. They didn't notice how
yes.
many victims there were until they started fessing up in order to save their own skins.
For
Granted,
sure.
it worked for Ridgway, but it didn't really work for Bundy.
Yeah.
But the point is that was the point of why they started fessing up, and they're like, "There's more." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yup.
these guys are good. That's why they become so notorious. That's why they gain infamy. It's because they figured out a way to leave as minimal evidence as possible." So that you might figure out that these cases are connected, but figuring out that it was them that did it takes forever and a day. And then
Yeah.
sometimes you still don't know.
And they looked into Bundy so much. Like, multiple people reported him, and they were like, yeah, no, he's not a good candidate for this.
Right? It's like,
Like,
yeah,
okay, fine.
he's too normal. I'm like, probably now
They
we
were
know
even
people can
saying,
seem normal and turn out to be complete monsters, but
right? Like that, I'm so afraid of everyone. Like, I like drive past the house, I'm like, I wonder if there's someone chained up in their basement. Like,
right.
but that's
That's
because
one of
I'm
the
always
cons
like,
of being a criminal justice / law major is you just lose so much trust in people. You're like, is that a
it's just like,
facade or are you an actual nice person?
like, are you manipulating me or are you just like kind? Are you really injured or are you just gonna shove me in your trunk and kill me?
Do you just happen to
Um,
be walking down the same street as me? Or are you stalking me? What's going on?
literally, and
Especially
it's
when you spend
ugh,
all your time downtown and it's just people walking all everywhere. So you just like, are these people following me or they just happen to be walking down the same street as me? What?
that's why I don't leave my house.
That's why I'm
Even when
not
I'm
in
not in
Seattle
quarantine.
anymore. Too many people, and I have too many trust issues from studying all this for basically as long as I
Right.
can remember.
I know, I'll never forget. I think it was, did you ever hear of, shoot, I can't remember which state park, but it was in California. And this guy had killed this woman and her daughter, and then he ended up killing another woman like not too long afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't like a highly sophisticated serial killer. But I remember reading that book like when I was like probably 8 years old, and it was like I took it from like my dad's room and I like read it from cover to cover and was so involved in it. And like ever since then, like I've been completely enamored with true crime and like reading everything about it.
I
But
don't remember what got me into true crime. I just remember what kind of got me. Like, I don't know what piqued my interest, but I know what got me seriously studying it.
yes.
Probably because, again, it's a whole, like, I don't know. It's been basically my whole life, I guess. I just always found that kind of stuff interesting. And
Same.
all I know for sure, I was like, I think when I actually seriously got into it to the point where I read up so much on criminals, their crimes, how they're eventually caught, how the whole criminal justice system works, and everything. It was probably after the first time, I think I was 11 or 12 at the time, and I first saw Silence of the Lambs.
I loved Silence of the Lambs.
And it was like after that, I was like, oh my god, there's a serial killer, and blah, 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 blah. And it was around that time that also I first heard my grandmother's story.
So crazy. Yeah, because like 12-ish is like the age where I feel like it was okay to tell you that
And it's like, by the
without completely
way, the
freaking you
world
out.
kind of is not, it's not perfect. It's not like you see in the kids' shows. Just thought you should know that.
And just to like you said, your grandmother is someone who likes to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And so many serial killers, or not even just serial killers, just criminals in general,
Mm-hmm.
count on that with women. Like, and they know how to exploit and manipulate that. And I think that's so fucked up.
Right.
So like, literally, this is just such a nice person. Like, why do you want to like just? Oh, it's so annoying. But
And not just...
That's why I'm always freaked out whenever I go and I hate pumping gas at night.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever a man approaches me, I automatically am like nervous right away. An unknown man anywhere, but especially at night. But
and
it's kind of
especially
crazy.
in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh God, yeah. I just whenever I think about that, it's like, oh, I think of that episode of Dexter, when he's talking to his dead brother, and he was like, maybe I'll go to Portland, and he's like, really, Portland? Isn't that a little bit cliche? Because all serial killers go to Portland.
The only thing that would have been more cliche is Seattle.
Right? That would be super duper.
It's like, dude, come on. That's as cliche as people coming here and going to Fremont because Nirvana. So.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's like, I get it, guys. You gotta go to Fremont.
We get it.
You gotta go visit it because Kurt Cobain's from there, but I
was never really into Nirvana, but I know a lot of people who are. But so earlier I've been listening nonstop to this podcast. It's called Let's Not Meet. I think I mentioned that to you.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's a Reddit sub, and I absolutely have always loved that sub, but especially lately it's been a bit annoying because people are just not posting quality creepy stuff anymore. It's so Let's Not Meet is basically true horror stories, but nothing involving paranormal or anything. It has to be an encounter with another person. So anyway, I discovered this podcast. My
grandma's story would be perfect for
exactly.
that.
You could put that actually. So they have a podcast. I would submit that because he would totally read it. Because I've been listening to it. That's why I love the podcast so much, because he sorts through all the the stories and everything, and he picks out the really creepy ones, so you're not wasting your time, and he reads them out loud. And so anyway, I had 2 Ted Bundy stories that I listened to just before we even decided that we were going to do Ted Bundy this week. Is predicting my future. But one was about, I'm not sure if this one's completely accurate, because I think I read somewhere it might have been disproven. But essentially, one Reddit user was on, and he was talking about his grandparents, and when they first started dating in the 70s, they decided to go on a midnight hike because the full moon was really, really bright, and why not? Because that sounds like a really good idea, to not bring any flashlights or anything or any gear, just go hiking in the dark. So
that's dumb. You could trip over something. What are you doing?
I know. Well, wait till you hear this. So they start walking.
Just wait. They get dumber.
So they were walking, and then they felt something soft, they bumped into something soft. So they were just I guess they both just had this really bad feeling, and they were all right, let's just go back to the car. So they walked back to the car. And then years later, after they had gotten married, they were watching some kind of interview with Ted Bundy, and the dude was oh, have you ever had a moment where you really thought you were gonna, get caught or anything? He was well, one time there was this couple walking in the woods, and they walked right into a dead body, and for some reason they just stopped and turned around. And he was I thought I was gonna get caught that night. So that was the first one. And then there was another one about this woman. And the woman, she was I think she was a freshman or sophomore in high school when this happened. And she and her friend had skipped school, and they went to the beach, and they were hitchhiking back. And they got into this VW bug. And the guy was really weird. He wasn't talking to them. He wouldn't smile. And the front seat was missing. So they just kind of ignored him and were talking or whatever, and then he was oh, I've just got to do something real quick, it'll be real quick, then I'll take you back. So he brought them down this dirt road, and they were no, take us back now. And he was blah blah blah, and they were get us out now. So he wouldn't let them, so they just got out of the car. And He was like, fine, 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 I'll take you back to the highway. So he did drive them back to the highway and let them out. And he said, you have no idea how lucky you are, and then drove away. And she said she's not 100% sure that it was Ted Bundy, but that she thinks it was him because it was a VW bug. It looked like the dude. And I guess he like took I hadn't ever read this before, but I guess he took the front passenger seat out.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard about him taking the handles out, but not the entire seat.
Yeah,
like
he
that
did
doesn't
it
make sense to me.
When he abducted victims, was driving with them. They'd be damn near impossible to see in the car.
Oh, okay.
So he did do that on purpose. But the mocking thing doesn't sound within his character, so I don't know.
The what thing?
The mocking, though. Oh, you guys are lucky, blah. It's like, no, if he wanted to, he would have had you.
He could have been. Well, she said the reason she thought that he let them out was because there was 2 of them at once, and they were like throwing such a fit. But I don't know. That also could have just been embellished, for like
but it also
effect.
depends on when that was. If it was after the time that one girl did get away, he might have been like, well, if one can get away, I'm not going to try 2.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I'd have to listen to it again.
I don't know. Some things are a little out of character, but other things are like I understand him.
Oh, it was in San Francisco.
Huh?
I guess it was San Francisco, and she said she couldn't verify for sure that he had ever been there during that time, but that his girlfriend lived there during that time or something. So, I don't know. It could have just been bullshit, but those were the 2 stories that I listened to.
Information I have read, and I did a whole bunch of like research to refresh my memory on everything about him for this podcast. California wasn't really in the picture at all. He went straight to Utah,
what I thought too.
Then to Colorado, and then just kept heading east. Like he was in Idaho at one point, but ultimately ended up going east.
Yeah,
there's
I don't know
reports, and he never talked about ever being in California, really.
Yeah, I don't think I've never associated Ted Bundy with California either, but I had just heard the story and I thought I'd just share it. I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure of the validity of either of those stories. People make shit up all the time through the internet. Like
they just go, hey, here's some details I know about him. Let me just build a story around it too. So
right. People do that all the time. But I thought it was weird that they both came up like the day we decided
right.
to do Ted Bundy. It's like, oh, Ted's looking down on or looking up at me.
The universe. It's like, oh, by the way, here.
Here's some stuff. So I was watching I think it was like the 2nd or 3rd episode of that documentary Falling in Love with a Serial Killer on Prime, which is on now, guys. It's very interesting.
I binged it all last night.
That. You watched the whole thing?
The whole thing in
That's
one
awesome.
sitting.
That's great. I'll continue watching it tonight, I think. It's because it's really interesting. But the thing that I really like about that is that it's not really about Ted Bundy. It's about the victims, and that's so rare. You know what I mean?
And all kinds, not just the ones he killed. It's the other people he affected as well, because they had the families on there. They had his girlfriend on there. They had his girlfriend's daughter,
of his girlfriend.
Just everyone he affected. The people who worked the case, the people who were working with the victims to figure out who it was, and the victims' families to find out who it was. It was everybody he affected that whether they were one of his murder victims or otherwise.
They were all victims of some sort for him.
Especially near the end, really the people who believed in him felt completely betrayed when he went, nah, I totally did it, guys. Sorry.
An ass. Like, literally.
Especially
I don't know
his
how
wife,
his girlfriend...
Like, she was just like, no, he's innocent. What the heck you mean you're guilty?
She's like, oh shit, I'm pregnant now. Like, oh, but, like, I can't believe his girlfriend stayed with him for so long, because he was just so annoying. Like, he would like withdraw effect. He was just weird. If someone was like treating me like that, I would have been like, bye. But like,
It can
she
be
just,
difficult
even after
to.
he went to Utah,
It can be
and
difficult.
even after she suspected him of doing it, she was like, it's okay, like whatever, I'll stay. But
It can be difficult to
it's
leave
okay.
those kind of situations, and
Of course, yeah,
I can actually
yeah,
speak from experience from being in a
yeah.
horrible relationship. It sometimes you
Mhm.
just feel like you want to just second guess everything, or you're just like, oh,
Mhm.
there must be a reason for it, or I did something wrong, or I don't know.
Yeah, you blame yourself, and also self-esteem has a lot of, to go with it. Like she even said at that time in her life, she had a lot of self-esteem issues.
Mm-hmm.
So she probably thought like he was like the best she could do.
Mm-hmm. Well, she was under impression she probably because she was divorced with a kid, and she
Hmm.
was under the impression she hit the jackpot when she met him because he was so
Right?
nice, and there
Handsome.
was like a stretch of what 3 or 4 years before his killing started getting a little out of control and started becoming more
Hmm.
frequent, and that's when his behavior started to change.
Hmm.
Because for a
Yeah,
while
that's
it
for
was
sure.
basically like they were in like a honeymoon
Ideal.
phase for a while,
Yeah.
but like they think, even though the
Right
first
around when he went to
confirmed
Utah.
confirmed victim was in 74, they do have there are some experts who think he started killing earlier, but it wasn't like as frequent. He wasn't as addicted to it at the time. It was like still kind
Yeah.
of a newer thing, which is probably how he was able to get away with not being weird in those first years of his relationship with his
Hmm.
girlfriend.
For sure.
But
And
as with every serial killer, they eventually just they
they
start
crack.
devolving as they go on, to the point
For
where
sure.
his last murder was nothing like his earlier ones because
Oh, I know.
he had just spiraled so much.
And for those of you, if you're not familiar, it was after he had already been arrested, he escaped prison. And he went on
Twice.
this yes, he escaped prison twice.
it was
But he
his
went on this killing
It was his
spree.
Colorado escape, I believe, because
Yes,
it's the
and
one
he
that he
ended
managed
up
to
in
make to
Florida,
Florida. Yeah.
and he ended up going to a sorority house, killing a bunch of people there, and then he ended up kidnapping a little girl. I can't remember how old she was, but
12.
she was nothing. She was 12, so she was nowhere near the age of any of his other
and
victims.
and
She wasn't his type.
and he didn't do the take in the middle of the night or use a ruse. He
No,
just snatched a 12-year-old girl in front of her school
and went
and
on his merry little way.
then killed her in a manner nothing like he did the other victims. It was far more brutal. It was far more messy. It was sloppy. He left all kinds of evidence. It was because that's
Yeah,
what
I
happens
mean,
when you start when the serial killers start losing control.
for sure.
They
They
can't keep
just,
up the keeping things neat and tidy and complicated for the police. They eventually, because it's the ones who are like Bundy and Ridgway and do so many kills. They're doing it to get whatever that feeling was, that rush was from their earlier kills, and
hmm
because you can't really achieve that again, they just
no, yeah,
start getting
just
sloppy
like drugs.
and exactly it just gets worse and worse, and then you get sloppier, everything gets messier, you start leaving more evidence, and your crimes
Hmm.
in a lot of cases just end up getting more gruesome, and you just
Hmm. It's like you're just trying to top
because that was one
the
thing
first
too,
kill.
because I don't know if you got to that part where he attacked the sorority, and some people are like, I don't know if it's him, he doesn't typically attack more than one at a time, like even when he took those
Yeah.
two girls on the same day, I mean they were hours apart, meaning he probably had one and then the other, so I mean he doesn't typically do 5 people in a day in their
Yeah.
house, no less.
And just like go one after the other, room to room.
And then
That
somebody
was that's
else
like more
like half a block down in the same
yeah, like
day. You're just
that's
like,
more like a spree killing thing. You expect that from spree killers. You
mm-hmm.
don't expect that from a serial killer, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's also very clear, like, that was another sign that
Oh
he was
yeah,
just losing it.
completely devolving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense to me why it happened and everything, but coming from the perspective of the police and people being like confused, I definitely get why they were like, no, it doesn't sound like him. Like they don't
Because again,
understand
new
like the
thing.
crack.
I
Yeah.
mean, the serial killer thing was new. The fact that they devolve at some point was nowhere even close to entering their minds yet.
For sure. For
But
sure.
that's the thing with killers like Bundy. They eventually devolve, and so it's a matter of when you will get them, not a matter of if. Whereas you
Yeah.
get somebody a heck of a lot more sophisticated, like the Zodiac, who doesn't devolve. He keeps his like head on straight, and he
But
eventually.
I don't know. I don't know. I think that the Zodiac probably has ended up in prison and we just don't know it. I think he might have devolved.
Yeah, but it
Oh, hold on, my
wouldn't have been
dog.
for the cases that we know him for.
Yes, for
That's what I'm
sure.
saying. He managed to elude being punished as a serial killer. Like if he ended up in prison, it wouldn't have been for something nearly as serious or as
Oh yeah,
something
for
that would
sure.
have gained him the notoriety that Bundy and Ridgway have. So in a
I
sense,
agree with
he
you.
got away because if he ended up in prison at any point, it wasn't for the brutal
The actual
serial
killings.
killings that he did.
Yeah, true.
And the
I
fact that
just
he
don't.
probably, if he ended up locked up, was probably on like a lesser charge, if anything, in a
That is
sense
true.
means he got away. Especially since to
Yeah.
this day we don't know who did it. We don't know who killed those poor people. And it's just like,
Mhm.
and it's all because he
I don't
didn't
know.
devolve. He didn't get sloppy to the point where the cops were able to connect all the cases and go, this guy killed all these people.
True.
Is what
That
I'm
is
talking
true.
about. Like devolving is
Yeah.
typically a case of this guy's getting sloppy. He's making
Just
it very
spiraling.
obvious he's doing all of this.
Yeah, like the BTK, he was so dumb. He just like wanted attention, so he like emailed the police and he was like, "Hey, if I send you a like floppy disk, will you be able to like track my IP address?" And like they could, and they were like, "No, go ahead, send it." And he like did. Like he wanted to get caught, you know.
Um.
He was getting sloppy. He was doing things, and he had like a long dormant period.
Mm-hmm.
So as didn't Gary Ridgway have a pretty long dormant period as well?
Um.
He like stopped. He like was doing a majority of his killings, and then he stopped for a little while, and I think that was right around when his kids were born,
Yeah, roughly.
and then he
There
went
was a
back
little
to it.
lull, and they were like,
Yeah.
"Is this guy gone? Has he stopped?
Yeah.
Let's go." Oh no! Wait, there he goes again. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why I always like with the Zodiac killer. The reason why I say I don't, I've never seen him as super sophisticated, just because I think he was obviously intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
but and was able to, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was in prison for other murders.
Mm-hmm.
That like I wouldn't be
It would have
surprised.
been one murder or like manslaughter or
Yeah,
something like that. The only reason he's
and he was
considered
able to keep his
sophisticated
mouth
by
shut.
law enforcement is because he played
The
games
codes.
and
Yeah.
ultimately they never like they knew all these murders were linked, but they couldn't find the guy who did them all. They weren't able to link a person to
Yeah.
the position of murderer for all these people.
I've always wondered about him. And have you ever heard of the Texarkana shootings?
That sounds very familiar, but it's like one of those. It's I
So
have one of those brains
it
that's
was in.
so full of all things crime, like immediately like remembering. Like I can be like, that
Yeah,
sounds familiar. Refresh my memory a bit.
there was a movie and it was called this what the hell? Oh my dad, there's like this pounding from upstairs. My dad's like pounding chicken. I totally forgot. I was like, what's going on? Um anyway, there was this movie and it was like the town that fears the sun goes down. And but it's like a real story, but they made it into like this awful like horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
But so anyways, Texarkana is like right in Arkansas. It's very close to Texas. Um and they had very, very similar killings, and like it was couples in lovers lanes,
Mm-hmm.
very very similar mo, all kinds of stuff. And then one day it just like stopped, and that was it was in the 50s that this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then in then the Zodiac killing start. So I always thought that those two might have been connected, And I know that experts think that he might have had a military background. And to me, that would make sense if he was like stationed in Arkansas and then like got, moved to California or something. And like when he was, I don't think he was active military when either of them happened, but I think that he definitely had some sort of, connection to the military. But if you look up at they're very similar. And that's why I've always wondered if like something like that could be connected. I've also heard like Black Dahlia connections, and I don't agree with any of those at all. Like, there's this one guy who's always like, "Oh, my dad is the Zodiac killer and he killed the Black Dahlia," and I'm just like, "Shut up!" Like so many people are like, "Yeah, my dad's the Zodiac," and I'm like, "No, he's not. Like, stop." There's like this
Like,
new
your dad might be a killer, but just don't assume he's the big name one.
yeah, there was this new series on Hulu. I think it was FX, and it's called The Most Dangerous Animal of All, and it was a play off that book that Zodiac loved, The Most Dangerous Game of All, which is about hunting humans. And this guy, he had all these connections and he sounded so legit, but then at like the end of the documentary, like everyone was like, there were all sorts of holes in the story, which I liked because they were like, yeah, so basically he's not. But like there's so many people who are just trying to find these connections, like, and he was adopted and his dad kind of did look like the Zodiac killer, but it was just so, people are always like coming out with these new books about saying their dad's like Zodiac or whatever, and I'm like, no, he's not.
Or some other
Yeah, my
serial
great
killer that was
uncle's
never
Jack the
caught.
Ripper.
They're like, it was totally my dad, guys. It's like, stop.
Right. Whatever. Like, at least, like, no one can claim that Ted Bundy's, well, I mean, except for that one girl.
Yeah. And she's not. She's out of the public eye. She doesn't brag about that kind of stuff. She doesn't want to be associated with them. And most children of serial killers are like that. No one's heard from Gary Ridgway's kids ever.
Oh, yeah, never.
They're just...
There is this one girl who, but she hasn't like tried to like make money off of it or anything, which I really respect. Her father was the Happy Face killer, Keith Jesperson, from Washington as well. She
Dang,
did
Washington.
this amazing, right? She did this amazing podcast series called Happy Face. And it was about having a father as a serial killer, but it wasn't really focused on him. It was focused on herself and like how she like dealt with all of this. And she was really, really compassionate, like, and used a lot of time getting to know the victims, which is why I also like the Ted Bundy documentary. And I think she didn't do it for financial gain at all. She did it for like a therapy, like sort of therapeutic, cathartic thing.
Well, yeah,
I would highly suggest that
chest.
podcast.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and it's like he, to this day, he still plays fucked up mind games with her. Like she can't even open her mail because it just causes a mental breakdown.
Yeah,
so scary.
Rough.
Right. Yeah, and I mean BTK's daughters come out too, I think, but she's never tried to make money either. Thank God.
Well, it's more like I just need to get stuff off my chest. I need the world to know that. Because there's still people to this day who fangirl over serial killers.
I know.
And you're just like, you do realize they're monsters. Like, I get, like, because I was always teased as being the girl who loved serial killers. I'm like, I don't love them. I just have a immense intrigue.
Fascination. Is
how I would describe it. I find the fact that somebody whose brain works so drastically different from mine. And it's just interesting because when you're quote-unquote normal, the fact that these people who have entirely different wired functioning brains than you, to the point where they think what they're doing's fine, but they some don't even realize that it's wrong or it's weird or it's anything like that.
Well, I think they learn that it's wrong and weird, but they just don't care. They don't see anything wrong or worth it, but they think they do, or
well, there have been
some who didn't
realize, like, when they got caught, they're like, wait, there's something wrong with this? This isn't normal? And it's like, what the heck are you talking about? But yeah, there are some who also, like, don't care, and then there's some who are just, like, who know, but, like, they're like, yeah, but I'm still gonna do it though.
They're just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's like what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one serial killer that I've always thought that could have been saved was Jeffrey Dahmer. I like 100% believe that like if he had had a different family life, and I mean, you can say that about any serial killer, but I do think that he truly did feel a lot of guilt about what, and I mean, even the way he was trying to make, you know, someone who wouldn't leave him, you know, and that's all he ever wanted. And I think that he did feel bad about it, and I think he was disgusted by his actions. But
like he probably even still like had that miswiring. But there are a lot of people who have been diagnosed with what is most commonly known as sociopathy.
Antisocial person.
I mean, there are a lot of people with these kind of, you know, miswirings in their brains who are able to function as normal people and not go on killing sprees and whatnot. So it really is a matter
They're called CEOs.
Oh my gosh. Rue went there. She went there. That was like the perfect opportunity to make a joke like that. I'm not gonna fault you for like jumping on that. But no, I totally agree that there are a number of them who, like, if they gotten the proper help, they might have been able to actually learn how to function normally.
Be, like, rehabilitated in some way.
Yeah, because there are people out there who have the same miswirings as a lot of these serial killers, but they're going about life without going on killing sprees or breaking any laws, really. They just don't feel the same way about other people the way the normal wiring
for sure
in the brain,
and I'm sure that there are some serial killers who like aren't like they don't suffer from classic psychopathy. You know, I'm sure there are some killers that have been completely nurture made instead of nature made. I think usually it's a combination of both nature versus nurture, but I'm sure there are some people
and there's like a whole delicate balance between those things as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure there are some people who were completely nurtured wonderfully and they turn out to be horrible people and criminals, and I'm sure there are some people who were treated absolutely disgustingly and they grow up to be wonderful people, you know. But there's definitely something with the prefrontal cortex or whatever that goes wrong with these dudes.
Yeah, and it's also women. How you eventually develop a way to approach these problems, because you can have the frontal cortex issues but also still like develop an ability to properly deal with the situation, rather than like some people will end up being serial killers while others have ultimately learned that there's a better way to do this. I don't need to go completely basically apeshit, and I can use this ability for better purposes rather than evil ones.
Exactly, like creating Amazon. But like, yeah, and do you think you know any sociopaths or psychopaths?
I think a couple.
You do?
Probably.
You think so? I think
they're undiagnosed, but...
Oh, yeah. I feel like a majority of them are undiagnosed.
Well, yeah.
But I don't know if I've ever met a pure, total... I think a lot of the people who... I think that people throw those names around. I think most of the people that I think are evil, that I know, are more so narcissists than they are anything else. But I think, yeah, I've probably met, like, one true, like, psychopath before in my life. But isn't it just, it's scary. It's scary.
Totally.
Especially, like...
I'm pretty sure...
Go ahead, sorry.
I'm pretty sure somebody I knew growing up was one. They just never diagnosed.
Did they ever... Do you think they, like... were gonna grow up to be like someone dangerous?
Strong possibility, with just how indifferent and just how much they just didn't seem to register how normal emotions worked. Didn't
I
seem
feel
to
you.
understand when they did something wrong why it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Never felt awful for doing stuff wrong. And so you're like, that
That's
lack of
really bad.
remorse, that just the inability to experience the emotions necessary to understand why certain things are wrong and why people are not happy with something you did or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got to a point where it just got creepy. And I was just like, I'm glad I'm not exactly friends and we're just acquaintances.
Right? Do you know where they are now?
I don't. I know,
Oh
like, the
God.
last I heard, they had just moved out of their parents' house.
Oh, okay.
But after that,
No idea.
like, I'm pretty sure he tried to get into college, but I don't think that worked out, and he ended up doing one of those, like, trade or military, like, the thing you do when, like, you had a certain, like, career ish in mind. You were gonna go to college, but you instead did go about it by a different way because college just didn't work. So you like go
Mm.
towards it through like the military or something instead type thing.
I feel you. Like vocational schools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like
I feel
that
like
was like kind of the last ish thing I heard, and that was about
that
it.
you've heard of. I don't think I've ever met like anyone growing up. Okay, well, actually, there is two people. One growing up that I met in kindergarten and ended up going through like middle school and high school with.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that there was going to be something like as bad as this sounds, like I always thought like if someone was going to shoot up the school, it was going to be them.
Mm-hmm.
And but he ended up being once he got out of high school, he's now relatively normal. And still a little bit odd.
Mm-hmm.
Um but he's not creepy anymore. He used to be really, really creepy. And I think that just came from like social awkwardness and
Mm-hmm.
kids can be mean, you know? So I
Yeah.
think he was just, but now he's normal. But there was this one kid who I went to high school with. I always thought that something awful was going to happen with him. I mean, he would like throw these fits at school too. He would pick up like chairs and desks and like throw them. He broke one kid's back by accident.
Mm.
Um,
Oh, maybe
anyway,
I know another one. You're reminding me of somebody I went to school with. Oh gosh.
but so this guy, he always like I just shivered down my back, couldn't even be in the same room with him. Like he creeped me out.
Mm-hmm.
And he's now been arrested for possession of child pornography and uh distribution and creation. And he hasn't even been put to trial yet because all it's happened like across state lines and they just keep finding more and more offenses to add to that list.
They're like, well,
So
you can't try him
I
yet.
always
We're still gathering up all the things to even try him for.
right, yeah, and I always said there was something wrong with him. Everyone knew there was something wrong with him, but like I just felt so validated when I read that newspaper
Mm-hmm.
article. I was like, oh my god, I am like a genius. I took one psychology class and I am now able to diagnose everyone I know. But so I totally knew that he was going to be, there was something very off about him. But do you have another person?
Yeah, you remind me of somebody I went to school with, and they were very much similar, but they were also just very. They enjoyed whenever they did something bad. They're a little too
Yep.
enjoyment of it, and
Oh, that's so creepy.
you're just like, because they would purposely hurt people at school and like just laugh, like
Mm.
it was just a prank, bra kind of thing, and you're just like, no, you damn near broke this girl's arm, or you damn near like you.
Yeah.
This person's bleeding a lot. This isn't funny. Get the school nurse.
Oh, I'm glad that I've never met someone who like was created joy from harming someone.
Right.
That's scary.
And
That's really
luckily,
scary.
after I had an incident in the schoolyard, not with this person, but it was a different incident that sent me to the hospital. That
Mm-hmm.
and because of that, like my family wasn't convinced the school was very good at taking care of the kids during recess, and so I got pulled
Mm-hmm.
out and started getting homeschooled in fourth grade.
Oh, thank God.
Um, well, also because and like on top of that, like my teacher wasn't a very good teacher. He just kind of went, "Here's a worksheet. Figure it out for yourself." And it's like we're in fourth grade. You need to teach us.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't college where you can just where you
Yeah.
can get where there's certain because there are. I had a teacher like that in college too. It's like here's the textbook. Figure it out. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, I feel like a majority of my college teachers have been that
My
way.
favorite teachers have not been that way. They get really into it. They love it. You can tell they have a passion for it, and you just go, "Yay! Look forward to
Oh yeah,
class."
for sure.
Was one of those teachers that it was it was one of my criminal justice teachers that was like that. I took even if I didn't need it, I took every single one of his classes because I enjoyed learning from him so much, and I ended up learning a whole lot. And he actually taught the intro to criminal justice class, and it was in
Oh, that's
that class.
awesome.
You know, we learned a whole lot of. We got our own copy of the Washington State laws and the RCW, the crime laws.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
Yeah, I have one professor like
he was
that.
also
Like
the
I take
professor
every
that
class I
hammered
can
the
get.
Constitution into my head. He's like, you're not only going to be better law enforcement peoples, you're going to be better Americans when you leave my class.
That's adorable.
He was just one
You're
of
gonna
those.
be a
I
better
really enjoy
American.
what I do, but I'm also very obviously an old fashioned like type guy. And
That's
it
adorable.
was great. I was like, man, like it was one of those guys who totally reminded me of like my grandpa and whatnot. And I'm like, I like this class.
I feel that. I love that. Um, I remember I took a couple of criminology because I we discussed this before.
Mhm.
I was very interested in that as well. And one of my professors, I think it was like intro to criminology, and he was a um a police captain for a long time. His name was Captain Korenzowski,
Mhm.
and he was wonderful. But have you ever heard of Craig Price, the serial killer?
Say it again. What was
Craig Price.
Craig Price?
Yes,
I've
he's one
heard
of
that.
only two serial killers in Rhode Island that we've ever had, and
That name is
or that have
extremely
been
familiar,
apprehended.
but like I said, like once you get past like Colorado,
Well,
I become less
he was.
familiar with the
I feel you.
details.
He
When
was
it
like
comes
this
to East Coast,
huge kid.
mob is where
Yeah,
I
East
am
Coast.
very well versed in.
I feel you. So anyway, he was just this huge. He was like 13 years old. He was this huge kid. He was probably like 6'3", 6'4" by the time he was 13, and he ended up killing this woman, and nobody could figure it out. Like nobody knew. It was super duper brutal. Like he stabbed her so many times that the knife actually broke. And then a couple of years later, this woman and her two children were killed on the same in the same neighborhood, and they eventually apprehended him.
Mm-hmm.
And Captain Korenzowski was the one who got him. He was like he did all the interviews, he did the arrest, he did everything. And but Craig Price was a child. He was like
Mm-hmm.
a teenager, so his case was actually one of the cases that I'm not sure if it influenced any other states, but especially in Rhode Island, they made it so that children could be tried as adults
Mm-hmm.
because he had killed so young and so brutally and like concealed it for a couple years. But yeah, so he was my criminology teacher, and I loved him.
One of my,
But I think
I think, was law enforcement specific classes. It was like how you oh, what was it? It was basically how to do stuffs in law enforcement job type classes, and it was taught by a police chief who, during the time of who actually worked Ridgway's case.
Shut up.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I think
That's
he was
really
like, I think he was like a rookie or something. Or like was a kid around Bundy's time, but it was one of the things that got him into it. And then Ridgway came along, and he worked that case.
That's insane. That's so interesting.
It's weird how just especially when you start studying this, and you get into that community, it's weird running into people who knew of these guys. Like the guy who taught my class was the intro class I was telling you about. He was like working at the district attorney for Washington State's office during that time of Bundy.
That's insane.
So he was also, so I had two teachers that were directly involved in cases of serial killers.
That's so cool. I'm trying to get like my light to work better. Sorry, Summit.
No worries.
That's so cool though. And I mean, Washington has so much opportunity to like know actual serial killers. So right? That's awesome.
It was weird how much Bundy had influence on people that I taught that taught me, or I got a chance to meet because of the program I was in. And like the fact that I had two instructors, each working with a different serial killer, but one of them being, Bundy, and then also having a chance to meet Anne Rule, who also knew Bundy.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me you met her. That's so cool.
Yeah, that was one of my big dreams. I really should bring that up here too. As I on the podcast, as I met Anne Rule while I was studying criminal justice and law in school. So like she came to.
And she, for those of you who don't know, she was a suicide phone operator, like on the hotline, and she worked with Ted Bundy. He actually was a suicide prevention person as well. And so she wrote the book, The Stranger Beside Me, and it was all about her knowing Ted Bundy. And I guess, he was a pretty okay guy as long as you were blonde, like.
Right. She said that they were actually like one of the coworkers that kind of become fairly good friends. And she was like, yeah, we got along great. He was like a really nice coworker, very gentlemanly, easy to work with. Didn't think anything of it.
And didn't he walk her to her car all the time? Because he's like, oh yeah, there's like this psychopath out there.
Let me keep you safe. He did.
Such a psycho.
Right. But yeah, I got to meet her. I actually had a one-on-one conversation with her too. Well, she was
That's amazing.
Signing, because she had just released the book about the Reynolds case, and I had got the book because I get all her books. I love her books. I love her writing. She's a great author. Which is another Washington case, for those who don't know, the Reynolds case. But it's not a serial killer. It was one of those woman ends up dead. They thought it was either one of the parents, and then they thought it was like a sibling, and then they thought it was somebody she was dating, and it was one of those cases where like somebody mysteriously died. Now we have to figure out who it was, and like the whole family just gets torn apart because it was one of those cases that was just the evidence was a bit convoluted, and
who ended up killing her?
I don't know.
They don't know?
They have suspicions. They have They have people that
but
are
not
like,
for like certain.
We think it might be this, but yeah, no, it's unsolved to this day.
Damn. That's so crazy.
But also, she was signing my book, and she's like, oh, are you blah blah blah? I'm like, yeah. She's like, yeah, so here's my name. I've read all your books because I'm in the criminal justice program, and I really want to, because I was still wanting to be in the FBI at that time. And I was like, I'm totally going to be an FBI. I'm hoping to be an FBI agent. And she wrote a little note, good luck on your career in the FBI or whatever else you end up doing. I hope you keep working on crime because you're clearly very passionate about it. And I was like, she wrote
That's
that to
so
me
cool.
in that book, and I have it to this day.
That's awesome. Yeah, that will probably be worth so much money one day. Don't ever sell
Yeah,
it.
no.
Like,
Are you kidding? She wrote it to
that's like
me.
priceless. I know, right?
It's like, this is a note
So
to me
cool.
from one of my favorite authors. It's mine.
Right?
You can sell it when I'm dead.
That's awesome. That's so
But it was
cool.
so great being able, because while she was signing it, she actually talked with me too, because she's like, oh, I know a lot of FBI agents and blah blah blah. Here's some tips. Here's some stuff you should know and everything like that. And here's what this is
That's
like.
so
And
cool.
I was like, oh my god, she's taking time to like talk me through like this, like with her experience. And it was very,
That's awesome.
it was a kind of a surreal experience too, because this person you look up to,
Right?
is
I
like,
would go
I was
nuts.
like, oh, don't go too crazy.
I'd probably cry if I met her. I cried when I met Susan Sarandon.
No. Yeah.
And I like, but yeah.
Honestly, I think the only reason I didn't cry is because she enthralled me with a conversation about, crimes
Right.
and solving them and understanding them and researching them. And honestly, my research, like, she gave me like research tips too that I still use now I use for the podcast,
Oh, that's awesome.
because, and she's very personable. She's very much anybody who wants anything to do with crime, being it researching, be it like discuss a podcast discussing it like we are doing, or if if you aspire to go into the FBI or be a police officer or be a lawyer, she's very much, I want to do whatever I can. If I am an inspiration for you, then I'm very happy, because we need more good peoples in those fields, because those kind of people are still out there. That's why she's able to still write books.
I like read somewhere that the serial killer that we know of, like how we think of serial killers now, is probably going to not be the same in the future, because it's so much easier for them to be caught now, and it's harder to
Or at the very least, it'll be a different style.
Yeah,
Because
I read something though, a lot of people
to
who
not get caught. It's just different now.
Yeah, I like read something that it was like a lot of people who would have been serial killers are now kind of being forced into spree killings or mass murders instead of, but which I think is kind of contradictory,
like
because the psychology behind the two are very, very different. You know what I mean? But who knows?
I think it's also a matter of self-control too. Like, if you have more self-control, you could probably be a serial killer in this day and age. If you have less self-control, is probably how you end up getting pushed to spree killing when you otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, that's true.
Because there's a lot of self-control that goes into being a serial killer and not getting caught for a while.
And you have to be, intelligent and organized and everything like that. But like, also, I think that we'll always have serial killers that work on the fringes of society, because unfortunately so many people like prostitutes and drug addicts, people who make their living on the street, that nobody investigates. It's so normal for them to go missing that they're not investigated thoroughly. So I think we'll always have serial killers in that sense. But
especially since also, they can, like, with people like that, they'll just dismiss their disappearances or deaths with something else. Even they'll be
yeah, they can be like a drug deal gone bad, or like she overdosed and
they'll just be like, oh, it's probably nothing.
Yeah,
and that's why Gary Ridgway took forever to catch.
Yeah, because he killed all these women with high risk lifestyles. And to me, like, it doesn't matter what lifestyle it is, you don't deserve to get murdered. But unfortunately, the police don't always, it's easy to dismiss something like that. But also, especially missing and murdered Indigenous women as well. They're such a vulnerable group.
Especially in those earlier days when you, even in any any time when you don't fully understand what's happening. Because even nowadays, with criminals having to change things up because of the internet and the other advances in technology, they have to switch up how they do it, and so there are criminals with entirely different styles now that law enforcement has to now adapt to as well. So it's so as the criminals adapt, law enforcement's going to have to adapt, and that's how you're going to get serial killers who are able to get away with it for a while until law enforcement figure out what it is they did to not get caught. Because Green River Killer Gary Ridgway changed, did things differently than Ted Bundy, mostly because of the type of person he was, the accessibility he had, but also when it came to covering up evidence, is because it was after Bundy. He had to do things a little bit differently. So because of Bundy, law enforcement learned some stuffs, and so you have to do things slightly differently.
That's why Israel Keyes
account for the
he studied them
exactly, and you have to account for the updates and evidence analysis that they come up with, and which is how you end up with them changing up how they not leave a trail behind them in order to not get caught.
Literally. And someone like Israel Keyes, he even told the FBI, he was I literally studied other serial killers and how they got caught and why, and that's how I was able. And he got sloppy at the end because he killed this woman in Alaska, and he stole her credit card, and he got caught using it in Texas, and he's never done something like that before. And he was like, no, I didn't want to get caught, but I almost feel that he did it subconsciously, because that was totally out of character for him. But he learned from Bundy and Ridgway and BTK. He studied what they did wrong. And I hadn't really thought about the history as far as Gary Ridgway. He like you were just telling me, I never really thought about he did learn a lot from Bundy, and that's how he was able to elude police for so long. And also
Bundy
his choice of
made
victims.
The police change their tactics, and so when Ridgway started killing, he obviously had to do things differently because he's like, I can't just, because it wasn't as rudimentary as it was in the 70s.
Yeah.
And so,
what year? I think it was 2003. Was it that he got caught, Gary Ridgway?
I think it was earlier.
So, no, I think it was with the early 2000s, because I remember seeing it on the news. Let me just Google it real quick.
All right.
Apprehended.
I know how.
Oh, November 2001, and his trial was in 2003.
Okay. Which also explains why he had such a big part in my, growing up. Because that would have been during my life.
Because you were...
I was
11. In 2001, I think I was 6.
Yeah,
no, I was 7.
In 2001?
So you were 9.
Yeah, I was 9.
That's insane. Because I remember in 2003,
and I do remember it, 12 or 13, hearing my family talk about him a lot more, probably because the case was going on.
Exactly. And because he had a dormant period too. I don't think it was as long as BTK, but
because he's from my neighborhood.
Shut the front door. Is he really?
That I grew up in. That's where
Shut up.
He was the next. He was he was on the other side of a major road from us, the neighborhood over.
Dude.
Not even kidding.
Dude.
We passed some of the growing up, I would pass places he abducted women from all the time. I would pass places he killed them and dumped bodies all the time.
That's insane.
I grew up in the area he did most of his killings.
Oh my god.
I am not even killing. That road 99.
You're not killing.
I said kidding.
That's insane. I thought you said kill. I was like, I know you're not killing.
No, I said kidding. I know I'm but I'm not kidding. Like, I passed those places all the time. Because
that's insane.
it was one of the major roads we used to get places. It was the road you used to get to the grocery store. It was the road you used to get to the next
You've
town.
probably like been in the grocery store with him before.
Maybe if he goes to the same one. There was like 3 of them there. So if he went to the one I did, he might have been in the store at the same time as me at one point. He might have, or like that same day. But no, he did everything in my neighborhood.
That's insane.
I grew up not very far away from the Green River. Like, I would cross it weird. All the dang time growing up.
You have like weird connections to serial killers. Right? Like, it's really
all
weird.
Because they're in my neighborhood.
Gosh, maybe I won't live in Washington. No, I'm just kidding. I love Washington.
Good.
I'd love to live there one day.
Bundy went to the University of Washington. I have a bunch of family that went there. I have a bunch of family who works in that area, so there's a lot of like the Queen and other surrounding areas. There's a whole lot of places I've been to that are close to or are places Bundy has been to or has abducted people from. Or
you know how far you are from the Macaw Reservation? I can tell you where that is in 1 second. It's on the Olympic Peninsula in Clallam County.
Oh, that's just that way. That's just right. I can see the peninsula from the beach that's a block away from me.
That's where like Israel Keys worked, and I'm pretty sure he killed someone there too. But I don't think he disposed of her body there.
I've been there multiple times too, to that general area. I've been all over Washington, basically because of living here.
That's insane.
I've been to Ellensburg. I've been to. I know I've been close to and in places that Bundy was in when he was hunting the girls there.
That's so nuts.
Because it's hard. Because Washington hasn't
changed.
Yeah, especially Ellensburg, because it's a small town. They don't change very much, so you can easily, because they have lots of stores and other type places
and
that
also
have been
the
there
public
since like basically the 20s.
Right.
Some of their oldest stuff is they're from the earliest 1900s, 1890s, and it's still there to this day. Meaning you can go to a place and easily have gone to the same place as some serial killer, because they don't change much around here.
Right, and
we're not Las Vegas. We're not knocking stuff over and rebuilding all the dang time. We don't do that here.
That's something that I love about Washington. Like Winthrop and Rosama and like those areas will never change. They're like the exact same, and they're so small. But also, like you saying that, it's also really creepy. But also because they have so much public land, and you know it's preserved. So like you can go like right where, you know, Ted Bundy buried his victims, right where Gary Ridgway dumped his victims, like stuff like that. Like
I've hiked there.
Yeah, that's insane.
I've been to Lake Sammamish. I've hung out there.
I have been there too. I've been there once.
I've been there a couple times
so
because
crazy.
You know they still have their events and whatnot, and I have family members who go there for nostalgic reasons. And so when you go there, you're just like, nowadays it's back to happy. Nobody really thinks about
go lucky
the bad things that happened here, but
just like you can still go to all those places where the Zodiac shot or stabbed his victims. It's like insane. That's what always creeps me out about like killers who kill on public land, like especially like national parks or like something like that, because people are there all the time. just like, holy shit, someone was probably murdered here at some point. Like
heck, I know where Gary Ridgway's house is. They lived in.
that's creepy. That's so
Because
weird.
we found out after, he was caught and being tried,
Mm-hmm.
where, at some point, people found out where it was. And I think it was after, like, I don't think his wife, family lives there. They've moved somewhere.
Yeah, they probably have moved far away.
But,
I would.
yeah, it turns out it was a place I passed all the time. It was, on the way to certain, stores for family members. Because, like I said, it was a major road that he, hunted along. And some of the...
You could do a murder tour. This is where my grandmother almost got kidnapped.
Right?
This is where...
Not even kidding. You go down this one main road that joins up with the road that he that had the places that he did most of his hunting on. There's this one road that goes up to it, and you just go, when you're approaching the road, there's like a point in which you just go, over there, couple roads that way, his house is over there.
That's so
And then
crazy.
you go a ways, and then you eventually end up on the, Highway 99 or whatever they're calling it nowadays that he hunted on. Because that's where all the motels that were. They've since cleaned it up. It's but and I think it's because of Ridgway. They just didn't like the idea that there was somebody there hunting the prostitutes, and so they eventually just cleared out everything, rebuilt a lot of stuff. It's not at all like the same as it was.
That's good. Because that was like a really poor, rough area.
And
at that time.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you just pass it all the time, and it was all the while passing it, there's some guy taking girls from there, and you wouldn't have known until after he was caught.
And I mean, like, you passing it, like, you probably, like you just said, there was someone taking girls, and like you probably had not even the slightest inkling,
right?
Not even like the littlest. Oh God, that's so crazy.
Not a clue. It wasn't until after he was convicted and serving his multiple life sentences that, because then the case is over, all the information starts coming out, and then you start going to these places. You're like, man, at one point he was here, like he's been going here just like I've been going here. What the heck? And it's even crazier than the Bundy story, because this happened during my lifetime, and so...
Yeah, you were alive during that,
Right, and so to know that during my lifetime he's been to places that I've been, I was just like, wait, what?
Yeah, and it's a very probable possibility that you've at least been in the same vicinity as him at some point in your life,
Yeah, especially with how often we use that road and surrounding roads to get from place to place. I would not be surprised if maybe we passed him on the road at one point.
Right?
That's how crazy it is.
You're cutting out a little bit.
Can you...
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Can you hear me? You good?
I can sort of hear you. You keep like going, like I can hear king.
I mean, I can hear you fine.
Oh, perfect. I can hear you fine now.
Okay.
It kept just like, I could hear you like talk, but it was like cutting out.
Okay, well, I also moved my mic too, because
okay.
I was taking a drink of coffee.
I gotcha. But no, now I can hear you perfectly fine.
Awesome. No, the last thing I said is I might have passed him on the road and not even knowing it. Like,
right?
We could have been going one way, he might have been coming the other, and just...
There's this picture from, how Google, you can look at the like pictures.
Uh-huh.
How like you can like look at your house and stuff. There's this one picture of Israel Keys and his daughter sitting in his truck, and you can see them, and it's so weird.
Whoa.
But he was Washington too. He was Washington in Alaska, but he did his killings all over the United States. But
I mean, even Charles Manson ultimately ended up here, even though he didn't commit anything. up here. It was all down in like California and whatnot. He just ended up at,
Mhm.
the island up here.
Mhm. That's like crazy. I wonder why they moved him up there.
He's not the only one. A lot of we even had the big time 1930s gangster Alvin Karpis up here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's a maximum security prison.
Oh, I gotcha.
So,
I gotcha.
so they're just
Yeah,
like,
we don't have
and
one
Alcatraz
around
closed,
here.
so
Right.
they ended up here.
That's so
Because that's
crazy.
what Charles Manson was in Alcatraz. Then they closed it, and they all ended up here.
Oh, I didn't know that he was in Alcatraz.
Yeah,
That's so crazy.
Alcatraz.
I feel like I have a very skewed timeline as far as Alcatraz.
Uh-huh.
I like when did they close? Do you know?
Alcatraz closed in the 60s.
In the
It was
60s?
like
Okay.
62, 61.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, big.
Wait, then how was Charles Manson in Alcatraz? Wait, when was he convicted for Tate?
Or maybe it was 60. No, it was 68 or 69. I know it was either the beginning of the 60s or the end of the 60s.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, no, it would have been
That's
closer to the
crazy.
end because Alcatraz was open for at least 35, 34 years, and it opened in like 32, 33. So it would have been the late
Okay.
60s. That makes more sense.
Yeah, that does make more sense. I wonder if they'll bring the Golden State Killer up near you guys.
Right?
But he's in a wheelchair now.
Yeah.
He can't really do too much damage.
I know, and
But
Alan Karpus was just like passing through because he was old, so he didn't stay very long. He was just being released.
I
It
remember
was
I
either
was
up here or
listening.
he was either here and then went somewhere else and then got released, or he was here and then got released. I don't know how they do it, but point
I
is
feel you.
he was old and got
He
released
was there.
because he was like what, his 60s or 70s, and they're like, get out of here. Manson, on the other hand,
Must be
was
nice.
in there until he died,
Yeah, he
which
was.
was fairly recently.
Yeah, that was just a couple of years ago. And wasn't like his wife, or not his wife, his like fiance at the time only trying to marry him so she could like display his body somewhere, like for money.
I don't even know.
And then he found out, so he broke off the engagement. It's like, huh. But
He went
I
crazy in
can't
there
remember.
too. Jeez.
I mean, like he was already pretty great.
Yeah, but it got worse.
Yeah, he probably just like was getting like super senile and like
Yeah.
probably he was probably unmedicated for his entire life because he started off being real fucked up like real young.
Mm.
But I can't remember what serial killer it was, but I was listening to this podcast and they were in prison the same time that Ted Bundy was in prison, and they like were in neighboring cells or whatever. And I guess Ted Bundy, like, this guy had like 30 plus victims or something. And Ted Bundy was like obsessed with killing more people than this guy killed. He like wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he was also a necrophile too, but he like always adamantly denied that or whatever. But this guy would like psychologically like torture him and being like, I know you like to like do stuff with dead bodies, but the two of them, I guess I can't remember what serial killer it was. I wish I could tell you, but I just thought that was interesting.
Right.
There's another freaking Washington serial killer. like
I said, we have a high concentration here. It's crazy.
There's got to be something in the water, man. Like,
I don't know what it is. Because
maybe it's Bigfoot sending like signals to like weak men. Like, I don't know.
Because even if they're not initially from here, like Ted Bundy wasn't, he moved here as a kid.
Yeah, he was from Vermont, yeah.
But basically, I don't know, they're like, he was such a good kid. Then we moved to Washington. Something happened. Don't know what. There's like some like bad like juju here or something.
Right? It's weird. It just like preys on like these men. Oof. Maybe it's like spirits. I don't know.
I mean, Washington is known to be crazy haunted, mostly because,
right?
The Wild West have a whole lot of crazy violent stories of our past as well, so.
For sure.
And then, of course,
It's almost like they tried to like build stuff on some ancient Indian burial ground or something. Like
Pike Place Market is.
Because the whole thing was.
It is. Pike Place Market
I
is.
know.
That's why it's haunted.
It is, you know?
And the entirety of Seattle has an, it has an underground because it was sinking. And so, and in like the...
Seattle's sinking too?
Oh yeah, it was sinking because it was on marshlands. And then it was like in the early 1900s or whatever, they rebuilt the city on top of the old one.
Oh, okay.
And just
gotcha.
Went up.
And, so there's like, you can like go down.
Yeah, there's
and,
an
like,
underground tour it's like a multi-block time capsule.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
There's even old stuff still down there that has basically been preserved because it's underground, so it's pretty well sealed.
That's insane.
Actually,
that's
a lot of there's these sidewalks in Seattle. Anyone who goes to Seattle, there's these sidewalks where they have these glass squares.
Mm-hmm.
They're typically purple, and they're letting light in to the Seattle Underground.
That's so cool.
That's why
Can you imagine
glass
though?
In some sidewalks.
Wouldn't it be really cool if they have like were able to like open some like business down there besides the tours? Like that would be so cool to like have a bar down there or something.
The only other thing other than the tour is a ghost hunt that you can
That's
sign
awesome.
up to do.
I definitely want to do that one day.
Dude, that place is charged.
That would be so cool. I bet it's nuts there.
Basically, every time you go down there, there's something that happens. And I'm not talking about, like, just, it's creepy, it's old, you, like, hear, like, the city or whatever. It's not just sounds. Like, you will see things down there that you can't explain.
That's
Multiple,
so crazy.
like, extra people in tour groups have been reported, or seeing somebody wandering around down there when it's closed, or whole bunches of stuff.
That's so crazy.
A lot of visual stuff.
Oh my god.
There's also a pub that I really enjoy going to, also haunted. I myself had...
Yes, you were telling me about that.
Yeah, I myself had seen the little girl running around in the lower levels.
That's insane.
Because there's a little ghost of like a little girl in a red dress, and I didn't really know about it until like after I had left, and I was like, I'm not really sure why that kid was running around. Like, what kid? I'm like, there's this girl in a red dress. She went that way, and it was when the place was.
We have a little girl in the red dress too. Sorry, go ahead.
I know there's lots of little girls in red dresses. There's lots of women in white dresses. There's lots of.
Yep. That's so crazy.
But it is suspected that she was one of the victims of the crazy, I'm gonna starve my victims in order to cure of cancer doctor that ran the hospital that was in that place before it got converted to apartments and a pub.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad for the people
you were telling me about her.
I can imagine living there knowing that hundreds of people were
I know.
Died in agony.
Literally pretty much tortured.
Yeah, that had to have been awful.
Ugh, God, that's just got some bad energy. Like,
right. And then speaking of women in white, there's a woman in white reported to have been seen in the haunted Pike Place Market when you go to the lower levels. So
awesome. Imagine just like going grocery shopping and getting like haunted. Like,
it's
like great. Hope I don't bring any spirits home with my eggs.
I was just here for a bunch of flowers. Why is there like a 1800s-esque, maybe early 1900s woman walking around all ghostly like? Lower levels are more, there's like more bookstores, there's more restaurants, there's more, there's a couple candy shops, it's not, like, most of the produce is up on top so that they can have it on like the carts and whatnot, like stands that are like elevated like this.
Mm-hmm.
On there.
That's cool though.
Right.
That's
many haunted
insane.
Places around here. It's crazy.
Yeah, I love Washington. Like, that's definitely my favorite state. My favorite city is New Orleans, but Washington is my favorite state.
And
For
Terry's
sure.
like, let's go get the eggs, ham, hamburger, 18th century poltergeist. Is that everything we're going to need when we go to Pike Place Market?
There we go. That's all we need. Oh
The
gosh,
problem is, like, the lower
that's
you
so
go,
crazy.
the more likely you are to see one of the other less frequent ghosts, especially when it's during either dawn or dusk.
Oh god. I like want to go down there at that time, but I also would probably pee my pants if I saw
Right.
something. Like actually all my faculties would evacuate. Like I would just like if I ever saw something real and that I couldn't explain, I would just be so screwed up forever after that.
I think just growing up here and having seen weird stuff that I could never explain, basically my entire life,
Yeah,
I just don't really think anything of it.
I feel
I
that.
kind of got
I
used to
feel
it.
that.
Oh, weird shadow person walking through a door because they're a shadow person and can't actually open it. Whatever.
That's so crazy. Oh, I definitely want to do a Washington ghost tour though.
There's
That
a
would be so
couple of
dope.
them too, so you can do the underground one. There's like an above ground one. There's,
That's awesome.
or I can take you on one that encompasses all of them.
Right? And the serial killers.
Exactly. Here's where I go grocery shopping. Turns out your Ridgeway is shop tier 2. Weird. Here's.
I wonder if any of his kids were like close to you in age.
I don't know.
That's so. Because I think they were. Well, I know he brought his son on like one or two murders with him. And he would just like tell his kid to wait in the car and he'd be like, "Where'd that lady go?" And he goes, "Oh, she had to like go home." And just like leave her there in the woods, dead.
So, oh,
But
her
that's
house is up
insane.
there somewhere.
She lives in a shack in the woods. Like, it's
She's
fine.
just, she's survivalist. Very, very, very enthusiastic about it. Don't worry about her.
She's just on the. She's getting back on the Pacific Crest Trail. It's no big deal. Like,
Right.
that's so crazy. Well, I think we did the 2 hours, did we?
We're at hour and 46 minutes.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Oof. I think the whole just. Honestly, I think how. To this day, Bundy still affects everything. Because it's weird, because he still comes up in conversation, too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just.
Especially with all the new stuff that's out about him.
Right?
You know, he had like a resurgence in popularity.
Yeah, and so all the other ones are coming up again, too. Like
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about Ridgeway, and it's just. I don't know, it's weird when you live in one of those places where it doesn't matter where you go, you are either in or within a vicinity of some place that one of the many serial killers that came from here has
Right.
been doing normal everyday stuff, actually abducted someone, actually killed someone, actually because I grew up going to the mountains all the time, and the fact that some of the places I went to were nearby dumping sites was
Right.
just crazy. The fact
Ugh,
that
you could.
the Green River is literally like 5 minutes from my house, I would cross it all the time when visiting relatives or going to one of my favorite.
Thank God he wasn't into little girls.
Right?
Like,
And it was also weird when, as a teenager, I would cross it all the time in order to get to one of my favorite places to hang out with friends. It was like this open. It was like a mall, but open, so it was like an outdoor type mall
mm-hmm.
place. Um, in Kent, right by the, and you have to cross the Green River to get to it, and it's just weird because when you grow up with family talking about the kind of stuff, when you go to places, you just go, "This is where it happened." It's weird to think that
Right.
that's where it happened because nowadays you just look at these kind of places and it's like it's so normal.
Yeah, so
And
benign.
to think at
Like,
one point, like even going to Lake Sammamish to this day, it's weird to think
mhm.
that hours apart, two girls were taken from there
In one day.
in one day with thousands of people around. And there were witnesses, but no to this guy going around talking to people.
Yeah.
People saw these
Yeah.
girls go off with this guy.
I have
But
no idea. I do think Ted Bundy was obviously intelligent, but he had a lot of luck. He was very lucky. You know what I mean?
Especially with the kind of guy he ended up being. He grew up into the type of guy that nobody would suspect would do these kinds of things.
Exactly. And like I've actually heard conflicting stories about his childhood. I've heard that he had like a pretty much ideal childhood, but I've also heard like things like, you know, he was raised by his grandparents, right? But he thought that they were his parents.
Initially,
and it was actually
yeah, but then when he was still a kid, his mom remarried, and it was like around that time, just before that time, just after that time, he learned that that was not his sister but his mom, and then they moved out here. Where
I mean,
she
that could
married
be like
Johnny Bundy and ended up having 4 more kids, and then at that point, definitely he ended up having a fairly regular.
yeah,
Granted, he didn't get along with his stepdad, but other than that, had a fairly regular childhood because all his siblings ended up normal.
being normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like hearing like that, like finding out that your sister is your mother is a pretty significant thing, but it's not like abusive, you know what I mean? Like, but like that, but like what was I going to say? Oh, so the pornography thing. You had even stated before how he like would look for, you know, discarded pornography. But like he used to go on camera and say like that's the reason I murdered people, because pornography. And it's like, I don't know. I think that what is your opinion on that? Do you think that like pornography can kind of influence people in a bad way and have like, you know, sort of violent sexual fantasies, or do you think that was sort of just a scapegoat that Ted Bundy wanted to use?
I think it was scapegoat because it's since been discovered that he actually had another girlfriend before Elizabeth. And all his victims strikingly resembled this woman.
Yes, I did know that.
She
and he like
broke up with him. Apparently, at some point while he was dating Elizabeth, he got back with her as well. And then but then he dumped her that time, and it was just.
Yeah, I did hear that that's why he killed women who looked like her, because she like broke his heart or something.
Yeah, I think he was just like just going, oh, because he was also like a peeping Tom as well. He was just a kid who was wired differently, based on behavior reported by his family. He just seemed to be a kid that was wired differently, and when he eventually got to the age where he was interested in pornography, because his brain was wired differently, it just kind of got warped. Whereas normal people have, you know, the reaction you typically expect when young boys find pornography. It's typically harmless.
Yes.
They're just being curious, but when you have somebody who's wired differently, who's going to interpret the whole thing differently and stuff like that, it's not. I don't think it's why he ended up killing. I think it was just
I don't either
from the beginning, and he just discovered at some point that he really liked attacking, assaulting, raping, and killing women.
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
I think the pornography was just him realizing. I don't know. I think it was just one more step that was along the way of him discovering, you know, that he would eventually get any kind of gratification out of being god awful to women.
Yeah, like kind of equating violence with sexual satisfaction in his eyes. You know, like I think that for the most part, porn is pretty much harmless. But like I do question whether like if he had like sadomasochistic porn and he saw that from a young age, like did that like influence that sexual violence early on, or was it just like he was bound to be that way? And I think he was probably bound to be that way.
I think it was bound to be that way, and maybe he did see that kind of pornography and he just misinterpreted it as what he eventually ended up doing.
Yeah.
It might have been what it is. Like,
For sure.
he just, um, I don't know, kind of a twisting reality to fit his own wants.
I agree. Sorry, my mom just came in. But yeah, sorry, go ahead. Twisting what he wants. Like he was I feel like he was
Like, he
using
might
that to
have seen
manipulate,
the,
you know.
not as common, more like BDSM level type porn, but he would have interpreted it as, I don't know, might have just given him ideas of how to just get, I don't know, these urges to hurt things.
Yes. I agree. I
I
agree with
think
that
it just
100%.
shaped the eventual predator he became. I don't think it
I do
caused it.
too.
I think it was just an
Me
influence on
neither.
how he ultimately ended up doing it, because rape was a big part
100%.
of what he did to these women as well. So, not caused it. I think
Yeah.
it just gave him some inspiration as to what else to do to these women to torture them before he ultimately killed them.
Yes, I 100% agree with you. And I think that was like sort of the case with BTK too, because he was super into like binding, you know, bind, torture, kill. That was his name. But like he definitely, I think he was, already, kind of screwed up. And I think when he discovered, BDSM, because if you, I've never, participated in BDSM, but from what I know about the community, it's like, someone, you have to be really trusting on both ends, and really have, like BDSM is in no way equivalent to rape, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that they get a bad rap for that. And
Yeah. Like, I myself have never been involved, but I know some people who have, and it's very much there's it's very much established that there's an understanding between the two parties. The whole
yeah,
dominant submissive thing is mostly an act. It ends as soon as you're done, doing your thing, and then you go back to, basically being a normal couple, take care of each other. There's the whole, I don't know, dominant being the dom throughout the entirety of a relationship, not just during sex, is not really a thing.
yeah, exactly. And I think that Ted Bundy, especially when he was giving all those interviews at the end, like I think he was like being super, he was trying to say like anything to like shirk the blame from him onto someone else and to stay alive. I mean, I think it was very up until the last, minutes of his life, he was trying to, bait people with being like, I'll tell you where more bodies are or something, right up until the very end, he was trying to manipulate.
Well, yeah, because once he
And
realized that trying to convey he's innocent and you shouldn't kill me was not working at getting him a stay of execution, he's like, hey, I will give you this if you give me this. So I will give you where bodies are, and I will tell you how many people I killed if you give me the stay of execution. And the Florida governor was just like, nah, man.
No, we're gonna fry you.
I mean, granted, that eventually worked for Gary Ridgway, and we ultimately found out that he killed a heck of a lot more people than we were able to convict him for.
Do you know how many he ended up killing?
I know he was convicted for 40 something, like 40, somewhere between 45 and 48, which is why he has a life sentence for everyone.
Yeah. He's got like 400 or probably even more than 490.
And then I know in order to not face the death penalty, which I believe we still have in Washington, definitely at the time of his case, and when I was in school, even when I was in college, I know definitely we had it, and it doesn't sound like it's been gotten rid of yet, I would have heard of it. So
Yeah.
we still have it. And I think in order to avoid it, he was why he was like, hey, I'll start giving you more information. And now we know he has upwards of like over 100 victims.
Damn. But do we know that for sure, or is that like part of his grandiose, like?
No, he's been telling him where to find them.
Oh, he has?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Anytime, if he
Damn.
can remember where they are, he tells them.
That's insane.
Right?
I believe, obviously, if he's telling them where to find them, he did it. But I think that, I think Bundy probably did kill more people than
well, there's lots of people who think he has. Like, there's lots of people who think he maybe killed more frequently than they thought. They thought maybe he kept up the whole a month apart thing. They just didn't know of any missing girls at the time. They didn't find any bodies at the time. And there's also people who think he started killing earlier. There's people who think he got killed in either started killing in the late 60s. Some others who think he started killing in the mid 60s. There are even some experts who think he started killing in 1961. So, and if he did keep up with the whole, basically once a month, abducting a girl or two and killing them, that would easily put him over the 100 mark.
I think he definitely killed more people than we know of.
Mm-hmm. Because the fact that he could go kill every single month and then they had a gap, I'm pretty sure there's like girls you didn't notice were missing because maybe they, I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't think he killed. I think he killed more people, but I think he definitely was the kind of person who had, very grandiose views of himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he would definitely lie about. I think he would definitely be the type to lie about how many people he killed.
Mm-hmm.
And
but I also think that if he had, because he confessed to 30.
Mm-hmm.
If he had been alive a little bit longer, we might have gotten more out of him and found even more.
Yeah, true.
But we also have found bodies and not been able to identify them. And like maybe if he was around, maybe we could have had a better idea of who they were. But
yeah,
but I also get the whole, a lot of people are just like, this guy's a monster. He doesn't deserve to be on this earth, which is why there's a lot of people pushing for him to be executed as well. So it's very much do you let him hang around? And
what's your opinion on the death penalty?
I feel like the death penalty kind of gets him out of it.
I agree.
I'm like, I get it. Some people are absolutely awful, but if you kill them, they're not exactly around to be punished for what they did.
Exactly.
Because these guys hate being in prison. That's why they're constantly trying to escape. Meaning it's awful for them. They're not thriving there. Like, even if they're like, hey, I'll give you more information just to keep me alive, doesn't mean they're happy there.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I feel like it's just such an easy way out. And also, as far as, like, obviously...
And it denies us information
Ted Bundy was 100.
that they probably otherwise would have given us.
And, like, I think, obviously, Ted Bundy is a case where he 100% did it. But I think just having the death penalty is kind of bad because there have been so many people wrongly, accused and convicted who have ended up on death row, and some of them have been executed, and, they shouldn't have been executed. They were,
Yeah, and granted, the families sometimes get, monetary retribution for that, but that's not the same as getting your family member who was innocent back. So
I would just be like, keep the fucking money. Like, like...
Did I ever tell you that when I was taking constitutional law, there was this one person in my class who always sat next to me when we were going over the fact that people end up on death row when they're actually innocent, and some of the time will also end up being executed before it's realized that they're innocent. This person, she was all she's like, oh no, they would never do that. That's not a real thing. I'm like,
Ugh,
yeah, it happens all the
it
time.
happens all the
And
time.
she was shocked. She's like, they do? I'm like, the criminal justice system is also run by humans, lady. They can make
It's
mistakes.
very easy to error. You know? Like, I would argue that
like any
our
field
justice
run by
system,
humans, mistakes can happen.
for sure.
It's not like there's
And,
some big
like, don't even get
conspiracy.
me started on the prison thing.
Yeah, this was based on the evidence. If the evidence says, like, at the time says the person is, guilty, that's how they typically end up with, like, the death penalty, if that's a thing in the state that in which they were convicted, and how they end up on death row and end up being executed, because it all depends on when evidence supports them not being there. And the problem is sometimes it shows up too late.
Way too late. And, like, I understand putting someone... I just don't think that the government, like... I mean, even, like, what's her name? Ethel... You know that woman who was accused of being a Russian spy?
Oh,
Ethel...
right. Oh, God, what was her last name?
Rosenberg.
There you go.
Rosenberg.
Yeah.
You know, and that awful, evil man, Roy Cohn, he was, I won't even get started on him. Anyway,
Perfect
he ended up dying of AIDS.
Anyway.
Yes. But, I mean, she, like, there was, like, almost no evidence, and he got her, like, literally murdered for treason, and it wasn't happening over an amount of time. Nowadays it's very hard for someone to get put on death row and then are like executed right away. It's usually like years and years and years before they do.
Ted Bundy was on death row for almost a decade before finally being put in the chair. So it takes a while, because there's also they also give you ample opportunity to appeal as well, because that's part of the process, which is why, just because you're sentenced to death doesn't mean it's actually going to happen, because you can go through a series of appeals as well, which is why it takes a while to actually happen, which contrary to some media portrayals of the death penalty, it doesn't happen very quickly. It's not
it doesn't happen quickly at all.
He's gonna die in a few days. No. Maybe in the Old West, when we were still like, in the 1800s, but not today.
Literally. And, like, I just think it's like Ethel Rosenberg, obviously, like, if that happened today, there's no way she would have, I don't even think she would have been incarcerated, and she got freaking murdered pretty quick, too. She and her husband. But, what's it called? I just don't think that, and I'm not the kind of person who's like, oh, like, only God can decide who lives and dies. I'm not really like that.
Either. My whole viewpoint is, I feel like you're either going to wrongfully kill someone, or you're going to give somebody an easy out.
Yeah. And I just think, like, if we had kept Ted Bundy alive, if we had kept other serial killers
he would have been happy in prison.
We put to death.
He was not happy there. That was punishment. That he had to live with.
But we could also gain so much. We could gain so much psychological insight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, even if he didn't fess up to, even if he did hang on to being innocent to the day he died of old age, like, we still could have at least analyzed his behavior and whatnot.
Right? Yeah. It didn't have to be him even saying anything. It could just be, observation. But
the opportunity would also still be there if law enforcement wanted to reach out to him every so often to see if maybe he changed his mind and wanted to fess up.
For sure.
Or, like, when he was reaching old age, if maybe he would be like, hey, I'm gonna die soon. Here's this.
And I feel like he's the kind
of person... I feel like a lot of opportunities were lost by executing him. Like, I get...
So do I.
Why... Like, don't get me wrong, I understand why certain people are for the death penalty, and I totally get why a lot of people cheered when he was executed. Because
if someone murdered my mother, I would want them to get the death penalty.
Or, like, your sister, or your... or anybody you know.
Someone I love, I would want them to get the death penalty. But if it's, like, a serial killer with an MO and has all these psychological insights, then, like, I think they're more valuable alive than dead. But...
Yeah, I'm kind of more of the mindset of, I don't really think the death is really a punishment. Like, I get it's like A
Yeah.
lot of them are like, oh my god, I'm about to die, but it only lasts until they're actually dead, which isn't very
Yeah.
long. Doesn't matter
Yeah,
how
and
you
no one
kill them.
knows
It's
what
less than
happens
a
after
day
death.
of punishment at that point.
Right? And like I would but like, you know, they really well, I guess, you know, the electric chair isn't like a great way to die.
Oh no,
But
it's
I mean like
awful.
but there's like a lot more modern methods now that are like almost basically euthanasia.
Yeah, lethal
So it's
injection.
like
It
they're
just
not even
makes you.
suffering, you know?
Actually, I think Washington still has hanging as an option too, if you really want.
Oh, I don't know, because sometimes, like, if they don't have you at like the
Because some places have
exact angle,
options. They
yeah,
let you pick how you
I know
die.
you can get the
All right, you're
needle,
gonna
you can
die.
get
Which way
like
do
the
you want to
shooting
go?
squad. Yeah. What would you have for your last meal?
Hmm.
I would have veggie fajitas, steak fries with vinegar,
Yum.
and a big ass cup of Coke.
There you go. Top notch last meal right there. I think I would have probably chicken adobo with
Mm.
some lumpia and probably maybe instead of like a soda, I'd probably do a milkshake because I really like my milkshakes and I definitely would want to get one in before going.
Did think of that. I did think of that.
I do love my milkshakes, and if not a milkshake, I would totally do like a root beer float or something like that.
Mm. That's a good call. Actually, I might change mine to a root beer float. I think so.
Right? Actually, when I was
Just
in
in
back
case.
in 2012, me and a friend had a sleepover, the night of when the world was supposed to end, quote unquote,
Oh, right. I forgot about
and
that.
we ended up picking like we were just doing a end of the world themed slumber party at that point. We both picked something we would have wanted as our last meal before the world ended, and
Hilarious.
I think at
I
the time
totally forgot
because I
about
was
that.
in high school, uh, I ended up just getting a bunch of chicken nuggets and fries and a milkshake, and I was like, "This is perfect."
That's awesome. That's great.
But nowadays,
I totally forgot about that.
nowadays I think I would go for
Yeah, you've got more
some like Filipino food
a
because
finer palate.
right. Well, also now I've spent decades with my dad as my dad, and his family's all Filipino, so I've spent a long time eating.
And they have some great
It's
food.
so good. I love family
Really good.
gatherings on my dad's side of family, so I definitely would want some Filipino food as like my last meal,
Hmm.
both for like nostalgic reasons, and also it's just delicious. So
Right?
I would have like a
Yeah.
nice full tray of like the adobo chicken, some lumpia, some boba, some pancit, and then just like a milkshake or a root beer float to go with it because I gotta have one of my favorite sweets before going too. So
Right. Oh, right. Yeah, I could have dessert too. I forgot about that.
right, you gotta have your favorite dessert
I
before you
think
go.
I would have I think I would have gelato, mint chocolate chip gelato. That's
Oh,
really
it's
good.
so good.
Or creme brulee. I love creme brulee.
Creme brulee is
But
awesome. Ah, but what about strawberry shortcake? What if I want that?
I do love strawberry shortcake. I did consider that actually in my head, but I just love creme brulee and mint chocolate chip ice cream. But strawberry shortcake, maybe if I was murdered, or not murdered, maybe if I was going to die
Maybe
in the
some serial
summer,
killer was nice enough to let me pick a last meal. I think I would go with.
if it was in the summertime, I would get strawberry shortcake.
I love how
But if
your
it's the
death row
winter,
meal depends on the season it is. You're just like, let's see. If it's like summertime, I'm totally going with like the strawberry shortcake. But if it's like wintertime, that
because it's
totally
like
gotta have that
strawberries are in
nice
season
warm
then.
creme brulee.
It's true. That's true. You gotta go with what's in season, you know.
Because then it'll be top notch. You're not just having some mediocre
Exactly.
thing before dead.
Exactly. Like, I don't want some, like, lame ass strawberries that were picked from 1,000 miles away and were, like, spray painted red, you know? Like, I want some real local strawberry.
Or they're bitter because they're out of season.
Exactly. Exactly. Rude. That would just be rude for a last meal. How dare they be bitter?
Right.
Speaking of last meals, my mom came down to warn me about dinner. Do you think we have
Yeah, I think last meal on death row is a great thing to end
I
on.
did too.
I
I agree.
mean that's basically the end for, that was basically Ted Bundy's end. He had a last meal and then he went and got executed. So I mean, we stuck the theme. We ended
We
on
did.
talking about death row and last meals, and that's how he ended. So I mean,
Literally.
I think it's always interesting to ask that question too.
I agree. It is. I love to hear people's thoughts on that.
Oh.
Maybe I'll start using that when I go on Tinder dates. What would your last meal be? Because it's gonna be tonight. I'm just kidding.
Be known as like the courteous serial killer. It's like, I care about how your last night's gonna go. Like, granted, up until I'm actually killing you, that's obviously not gonna go very well. But up to that point, before I start torturing you to death, what would you like?
Actually, your favorite food. Oh my god, yeah.
But
okay,
yeah.
So next week we're gonna do Godfather Part 2.
Yeah. I think it would also be interesting to incorporate those kind of questions into the podcast too.
I agree.
Granted, we're ending now, but I am on Twitter and whatnot, so if you want to like submit your answer to what would your last meal be, by all means put either tag me on Twitter with what your answer would be or something like that, or DM me and we can like go over them real quick before starting talking about The Godfather Part 2 next week. Be like, hey, we heard back and here's some, because it really is interesting to hear other people's answers to these kind of things, because it is a
for sure
unusual question. It kind of makes you think. You're like, I know I haven't done anything to put myself in that situation, but if I were, it's interesting to
hear about it.
Yeah. All right. So
all right.
That was oh.
That was a good episode. I feel
that was a very fun episode to do. I like how we incorporated a few other serial killers for comparison.
Same. I feel like we were very knowledgeable on the subject.
Yeah, especially since there's a lot of. It's hard not to be knowledgeable about serial killers when you grow up in Washington.
Right.
Cool. So yeah, next week is Godfather Part 2. So we'll be talking about the mob again, but like later in the century, since the Godfather Part 2 takes place after Part 1, and Part 1 ended in the 50s. Like early 50s.
Yeah.
And so we'll be picking up in the 50s and going, so we can look at like how the various mobs changed and started changing their tactics and whatnot in the 50s to adjust to the way times are changing. So that'll be interesting to talk about as well.
For sure.
So that was an
awesome
you guys. Podcast. So thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you have a good day, evening, night, whatever time it happens to be where you are.
Yeah, and make sure to enjoy your food, because you never know what would be your next meal.
Right, so. Exactly. Thank you all so much for the support. We really appreciate you. And we will see you next week. Again, Thursday, typically at 1:30 Western, 4:30 Eastern. We might, depending on how things go, we could end up early again. Don't know. Totally depends on.
Yeah, I don't have class anymore, so we can do 4 p.m. here, 1 p.m. there. Whatever works best for you.
I'm okay with doing it on the hour. I kind of like it, so if we want, we could do.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so next week then, Thursday, 1 p.m. Western, 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back with The Godfather and Mob during the 50s and after. Yay!
Bye,
Sounds good.
guys.
Bye, guys.